Help me understand what you're experiencing every day.
Chaos.
Total chaos.
Chaos?
Just chaos. Right. I mean, there's just no accountability for the students.
More than any other issue, these veteran Metro Schools educators say that student discipline, or the lack of it, has become a huge concern under Dr. Sean Joseph, as the school's director tries to dramatically reduce the number of students being suspended.
When students are in school and they're disruptive and they're running through the halls and they are using profanity and hurting other students.
Elementary guidance counselor Constance Wade and these teachers from across Nashville acknowledge that Joseph's push to keep children in school, especially children of color, is a good idea. But that hasn't stopped students from taking advantage of those good intentions.
You reduce discipline because we cannot suspend students. But then by the same token, you've kind of open up a Pandora's box because students aren't always feeling like they get consequences, so they continue.
Students walk in and out of classes, they walk out, and when they come back, they're laughing, and it's more disruptive because they know they can do it.
And it's like a domino effect. When one child sees that nothing's going to happen, then the rest of them will follow suit. Oh, well, nothing's going to happen to me because nothing happened to my classmate.
Right.
I think part of the issue also goes to, even with the best intentioned admins, their plates are so overflowing as well. There are days that we don't have an admin in the building and we have a principal designee, and that person does not feel comfortable disciplining, nor do they have the right to discipline in the same manner. You know, if you've got a minor discipline issue and, you know, the principal's in a meeting with their superiors, that's not going to take priority. And so I think that also adds to the domino effect of, well, we'll deal with this later. Well, then you have time to deal with that one, but something else has come up in the meantime. And there have been plenty of times where pretty moderate discipline issues have just been either forgotten about or ignored.
But Joseph invoked images from the movie Gladiator during a recent meeting with principals, where he suggested that teachers who want students suspended are like the crowd crying for blood.
Your teachers sometimes are like that Gladiator stadium, like they want blood. They want blood and they want you to feed them. They want you to feed them raw meat.
We played the clip for the teachers.
I'm speechless and appalled. This is our leader saying this. I'm speechless.
Is this part of the problem?
Oh, for sure.
Yes.
Tell me.
I mean, it seems like he doesn't even respect teachers on a most basic level. If he's saying that the problem, or part of the problem, is that we want some kind of order in our classrooms, that's not supportive. If we want blood, if that's how you want to say it, it's because we can't teach. And if we can't teach, the students can't learn. And if the students can't learn, that's a very threat to our democracy. We just want to teach.
It's not a matter of wanting blood. It's a matter of wanting consistency with consequences. One of my former students was arrested for the killing of the singer-songwriter. And you saw where they were kicked out of the the courthouse because of their behavior.
The teens in court today got to the magistrate, turning around, talking, and laughing enough during the hearing for criminal homicide, the magistrate threw them out.
Picture that in the classroom. We can't kick them out like the judge did.
When you saw that, did you think about what had gone on in your classroom?
I did. For this to happen, I cried because she was one of mine. We don't want blood, we want help.
Do you think the school system and the way the school system deals with discipline could have contributed to what she
Absolutely.
went
There were
through?
no consequences when she was in school. Nothing was ever done.
This year alone, I have had a student shoot and kill another student since January. I have had a third student pull a gun and do a carjacking. And these are students that I tried to get help for when they were in school. And they never did anything in that extreme, never. But every time they would be sent to the office for skipping or being disruptive in class, they were brought right back. And I had a student that actually threatened to kill me. And when I brought that to the attention of the principal at the school I was at the time, they laughed and they would not do anything with the student. And that student went on to shoot an elderly grandmother a couple of years later. And it was at that point that I realized that I'm in a position to hopefully make a difference, but my hands are tied. And I feel like the school system right now is contributing to this. They talk the pipeline to prison. By not holding our students accountable, we are contributing to the increase in crime. And that is part of the heartbreak that I have right now, is because I can't sit quietly and watch that continue to happen, because I've already, since January the 1st, seen it happen to 3 kids that I would call my babies, one of them deceased.
You're saying that a student threatened to kill you and there were no consequences.
That's correct. That's actually happened twice. I was injured in December by a child that we knew had a lot of issues, and I called for help and no one would come. And I was in the position to, it was a safety issue, and I got injured in the process. No, you know, that's just his, you know, his needs. And they even actually went as far to tell me that my tone is what provoked it. Like, it was my fault that I got hurt, because me telling him to sit down and calm down, and because I was having to do it kind of sternly, is what gave him permission to attack. And I mean, that's a hard pill to swallow when you're told, you know, well, you kind of deserve being hurt because, you know, you said that.
As educators, our job is to provide a safe and caring environment for our children conducive to learning. But when you don't feel safe and you don't feel cared for, it's hard to do that job.
Here's your Buicks.
With Nashville teachers struggling to deal with growing concerns about student discipline,
you have to have a safe environment for students. I mean, that's foundational.
we showed our teachers Dr. Sean Joseph's job interview from 2016, where he laid out his vision for the district.
In every school that I've been in, versus whether I was a principal, whether I supervised schools as a director of school performance for 34 needy schools, and the work in Delaware and currently, we focused on culture and particularly looking at the positive behavior intervention and support systems. That's one of the most researched programs in the country in terms of providing, but it has to be implemented correctly. It's complex, but implemented correctly, it makes things better.
Their reaction?
Dr. Joseph says it has to be implemented correctly, and that's having the resources. And the schools, my thing is not to slam any administration or anything. It's just to ask to be heard that we do need those resources. I have children with PTSD in elementary schools. I have students with TBI, traumatic brain injury, in elementary school. And the resources that we would need for those students, my thoughts are they just aren't there. You can't roll out something when you don't have the people in place to do it. We recently had our mental health provider that's at the school for the students that have TEND care. They get intensive therapy if the parent signs up for them to do that. They just pulled out of our school, not even going to wait till the end of the year. We're trying to see if they will stay. We need a full-time social worker at our school. She's there part-time. She has other schools that she is servicing. We need the person that is the trauma-informed specialist for the students with the ACEs. When we talk about the adverse childhood experiences, all of these things can work, but you can't roll something out and not have the resources.
So what I think I hear you saying is that if you're going to take suspension away as one of the tools, you've got to replace it with other tools at the exact same time.
Absolutely. That's it in a nutshell.
I have a classroom with some very strong behaviors, and we have students coming with lots of trauma and lots of ACEs at 9 years old, having 3, 4, 5 ACEs. Adults don't even have 3, 4, 5 ACEs, and yet I am not trained or certified in trauma, and I don't know how to help these students be successful. I want to, I care about them, I love my students, but I didn't take a course in college on trauma-informed practices. And so I'm expected to discipline them in that way, but I don't have the training for it.
Well, she's preaching the gospel right now. I have school social workers that work with my students. They're phenomenal, but they're split between multiple schools. Each school needs a social worker because every single school in Metro has students who have that need. And once you pair them up with the social worker, it's amazing. But if you're going to make changes like this, you do need that support, and you need to fund it, and you need to listen to school counselors because they know best.
Was it a mistake to make the changes without having the proper tools in place?
I think a mid-year policy change by the board was a mistake. You should never do something like that that impacts teachers in the middle of the year. You need to vote on it. If you want to change it, start it in August. So then we have PD to learn about it and not just make a rash decision middle of the year.
When I'm trying to teach a lesson and a student is acting out and won't de-escalate, I've got to send that student out to get help. But if no one's available to help them in that moment, then they just have to sit out of class and miss class. So it's just challenging to implement it when there aren't the resources to support it.
And I've heard that teachers can get into trouble for too many office referrals. Is that true?
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
I mean, if you can handle something in the classroom, every teacher does that. That's the first step. But as Mary said, if a child refuses to de-escalate, refuses to sit down, refuses to stop talking, refuses to put the cell phone away, refuses to stop eating chips and drinking Coke over the computers, these are not major transgressions, but they add up.
So if you have a student who is out of control, it could adversely affect your career if you send that student to the office?
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
And I think that is a huge part of the high teacher turnover rate here. I have witnessed first and second year teachers with those children that they need help with. They don't have all those tools in their toolbox yet, and there's no support for them. And I've seen them go home in tears because they feel like they've failed, or they, the administrator will come after them and say, that's not how you should have handled this situation, where they're really trying to do their best, the best way they know how. But when they don't have somebody that can come in and model how to deal with certain situations, what are they expected to do?